Well, right. Good morning, and welcome to the fourth podcast in this series of six. As you know, I've tried to link my guests to various chapters of the book. I'd like to welcome Karl Watkin, MBE, this morning. Good morning, Karl.
Good afternoon from less than sunny Australia on the Indian Ocean.
You're in Fremantle, Australia. I've linked Karl to the chapter that I wrote about embracing failure and the lessons that we can learn for it. You know, the old expression, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Karl is an extraordinary man who I've known for probably 20 years or more. I'm proud to call him a friend. He's certainly someone who, more than anybody else I know, has been through the highs and lows of business. He's been one of the wealthiest men in Britain. He's wined and dined with world leaders, famous rock bands, politicians, sports stars. He's owned private jets and boats, and I don't mean small yachts. We're talking kind of full-time crew of 12 with a fuel bill more than probably many people's annual salary. American Express, I seem to remember, gave you your own executive assistant for a while. That was fun. But also, you've experienced terrible lows as well through a series of bad luck and poor investments. You've experienced bankruptcy, you've had health issues, and you fought back. And the second time round, you're looking at deals now that are every bit as big as the deals that you'd successfully executed before. I know that you're currently writing your autobiography, What Could Possibly Go Wrong, and I'm sure you'll tell us. But more importantly, you know, it's often said that it's not how you fall down; it's how you get up again. And you found the tenacity to do that. And I'm fascinated at trying to get inside the psyche and understand how that's happened. But do you want to kick off, Karl, by just talking a little bit about your story, what made you successful in business, and kind of what happened? You know, looking back, tell us how all this roller coaster came about.
Well, I mean, you know, it starts in a place called Wallsend, and if there is a rough end of Newcastle, it is Wallsend, which was a very much a working class area where I was largely brought up, and I didn't have the greatest of childhoods, to say the least, but that's a completely separate matter. But turning to business, I think a very similar situation to yourself. When I was 13. My father had been a miner and he'd left the mines and he'd become a policeman. And when I was 13, I was expelled from school. And the reason eventually I was expelled from school was trying to have sex with one of the girls in the back of the physics lab one day. But it was just the final straw. I was a complete disruptive influence. And now, of course, I'm completely unchanged, and now I'm an agent for change instead of a disruptive influence. And it was a disaster for my father, at least he thought it was, and brought massive shame on the family, etc., etc., etc. And we had to move. We had to move house because there was no other school in the area that would take me, and we moved to a place called Morpeth, which is 30 miles away, but is a completely parallel universe compared to Wallsend, very much a middle-class market town. And I arrived there and started school on the Wednesday. And on the Friday that week, one of the guys that I met at school that week, a guy called Rod Arthur, invited me to a party. And I went to the party. And I asked my parents first if I could go. And then I went to the party. And they sent me on a Friday night as a new boy to a party with teenagers in my school uniform. And anyway, Rod met me at the door, pissed himself, told me to take off my tie, my blazer, and my jumper, and we went in. And I walked through the door, and he said, "Right, this is Diane. You're with her." And I sat on the seat. Diane jumped on my knee and started slogging my face off. And I thought to myself, if that's the worst that can happen, bring it on, you know. And since then, I have never been frightened to take on any challenge. People think that I take risks, and I don't take any risks at all. I don't gamble, but I don't take risks in business, or at least I try not to. And from that moment, that no matter how bad things could be, you would always find a way to get out of them. I think that was the one thing in my life that really changed my life more than anything else, and made me able to take on any challenge. And there's been many challenges over the years.
Let me just jump in there, Karl. Let me just jump in there. Uh, just to talk about the influence that our fathers have on us. I've come from a similar background, awkward relationship with my father, who, when I got thrown out of school, took me aside and said, "We'll always love you, son, even though you'll never amount to anything." Which I didn't know whether, looking back, whether he did that out of frustration or because he thought that would be a motivating chat for me. But looking back on it, it was probably the most motivating thing that anyone's ever said to me, because I thought, "Fuck you, I'll show you. I'll show you what I'm made of." And from then on, even though he's not here anymore, perhaps a lot of what I'm striving to do is to keep impressing my father. Do you have the same kind of connection when you look back at the relationship you had with your dad?
Well, I didn't really have a relationship with my dad after the age of 13. He never spoke to me again, and he hadn't spoken to me much before then. Um, it is an interesting look on life, and I never cease to be amazed at how many people like ourselves had the same historical situation, same experiences, and they've gone out and they've taken on the world. Um, I'm not sure personally whether I'm ever doing it to prove to my dad. And the other problem was that when I was at school, because I've got the attention span of a bored gnat, and they thought I was thick. And once you're labelled as thick, you become thick, And in the first year at grammar school, I was in 1C, and I ended up being bottom of 1C in that year, and that had a terrible effect on my life as well. And there is no question that all of the people at school that knew me then are astounded with what I've done in my life. But I'm not sure that I did that to stick it up them either. I mean, there's the old saying behind every successful man is an astonished mother-in-law, and my mother-in-law was immensely astonished because the last thing she wanted me to do was to marry her daughter, and that happened. Anyway, we fast forward to getting into business, and I when I first I really started business when I was at school, when I was at Morpeth, and I was buying and selling cars during the week because I was bored shitless at school, and I was buying cars on a Tuesday night at the Newcastle car auction. I would spend a couple of days cleaning them up, polishing them, making them look a lot better, and I would sell them on a Friday and Saturday. And very quickly, I came to be able to, within 6 months, I was able to buy my first sports car, which was a Triumph TR4A, bright red. And I pounced around more within my Triumph TR4A like the flash bastard that I was rapidly becoming. And it's interesting when you look at your book, Eat the Pudding First. I'm in complete agreement with many of the things that you say in there. Not least of which was when I had my red sports car, people asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, by the time I'm 30, I'm going to have paid for my own house, and I'm going to have a Porsche 911, and it'll be a new one. And people said to me, well, how are you going to do that? And I had absolutely no idea how I was going to do that, but that was my objective in life. And a lot of people rubbished me for saying that, but your book proves the case, eat the pudding first.
Thanks.
Uh,
Keep it
and
going.
and anyway, I started off as a trainee salesman, actually filling shelves in the supermarket for United Biscuits, which was McVitie's, when I left school. I left school on the Thursday, and I started work on the Monday. Sorry, when I was 18, and I had two job offers. One was the filling shelves in supermarkets, and the other one was working for the local newspaper selling adverts. Both paying 1,200 quid a year, but the one filling shelves in supermarkets, you got a brand new out of the box Ford Escort, so there was no competition. I went for that job. And then I did that job for about 9 months, which was all I could stand. It was absolutely doing my head in. I was working by this time as a DJ at night, 7 nights a week, with people like Elton John, Dave Lee Travis, Noel Edmonds, Paul Burnett, Kid Jensen, Pants people. And I was working 7 nights a week, and I was making more in a night as a DJ than I was making during the day when I was working for McVitie's. And quite why I continued doing it, I don't know. And then my boss became ill. He had a mental breakdown, and he was the key accounts manager. So I did his job and my job as well. And I was knocking hell out the figures. And then what happened next was that they decided that they would retire him off, and they retired him off, and they advertised for the job, but they didn't even interview me, which really pissed me off. And then, to add insult to injury, when they appointed the new guy, they asked me to train him for a month in the job, you know. And on the first day of training him for the job, I was at a nightclub that night. And on the morning, I bumped into this woman who I'd only just met. And everybody knew that United Biscuits had screwed me over and what a good salesman I was. And so she said that her husband was looking for a key accounts manager, which was exactly the job that I'd been turned down for at United Biscuits, only he was with Heinz. And that she would fix me up with an interview. And I just said, yeah, okay, because I was really irritated on the day. And then that night, I was working the nightclub, and Jill, my wife, it was her night off. We'd met in the nightclub. She worked behind the bar, and she was at Newcastle University at the time. And she was standing talking to me, and this guy comes up completely out of the blue and asked me if I minded him dancing with my girlfriend. So he danced. And as fate would have it, that was Brian Chapman, who was married to the woman I'd seen earlier in the day. Anyway, Jill and Brian got talking, and they came back, and Brian said, "Hello, I'm Brian Chapman. I'm interviewing for a key accounts manager. Can you come for an interview tomorrow?" And I said, "Yeah, okay." He said, "Right, be here at 5:15." So at 5:15 the following day, I walked in, and he stood up. He said, "I am sick of talking to fucking wankers. The job's yours. Let's go and have a beer." I didn't even get interviewed, you know. So I started working for Heinz. I worked for Heinz for 24 months, and 23 of the 24 months I was the UK's top salesman. And I also became the holder of the world record for the world's biggest ever sale to one store, and that was in 1978. And 40 odd years later, that record still hasn't been beaten. So I still hold the world record for the biggest ever order of Heinz goods. Heinz were a funny company. You had to start work at 8:30, and you had to leave. You couldn't leave work until 5:30. Didn't really matter what you did between 8:30 and 5:30, as long as you were there. Well, of course, I was getting in at 3:00 in the morning, usually pissed from being a DJ, and so I was turning up for work at about 11:00. And then I'd have a cup of coffee and a sandwich, and then I'd knock off at about 3, go home, get ready for the night working again. And of course, this attracted their attention after quite a while.
Didn't sit well with the Heinz culture.
It didn't so well. Yeah. Well, as you well know, I'm completely unemployable, and so they did completely the wrong thing. It was incomprehensible to me. What they should have done is they should have discovered what it was that I did between 11 and 3, and then got rid of 80% of the sales force in the country, and got everybody else to do that. But they were going to fire me, basically. And that came at a time when I was getting a bit fed up with the music industry, because, as you know, people in the music industry have got very few ethics and don't pay their bills on time. And it coincided with Jill and I. We used to go on holiday all the time. We went to Moscow and to Leningrad for a holiday. And one night we're in the Interest Hotel in Moscow, and there was this guy, and he had this big fur coat on. He's obviously having a ball, you know. And I said, "That guy's got a great job." And Jill said, "Well, go and ask him what he does." So I went to ask him, and he bought me a drink. And it turned out that he was the international marketing director for Combine Harvester, and he had a great job. He had a fabulous life. He flew around the world, staying in 5-star hotels, just the job. So a couple of days later, we go back to England, and there's an advert in the paper for a Vickers company, a company called Crabtree Vickers, and it was an insane advert. And again, for you people who are listening, it's a lesson in life. The advert was for a trainee export manager, and you had to have an engineering degree. You had to speak fluent German, fluent French. You had to have 5 years capital sales experience. And there was one other thing which I always get. There was 5 things anyway. And of course, I had none of them. But fate was intervening, so I thought I'll apply for the job. So I applied for the job, and I was amazed when I got an interview, and I was even more amazed when I got the job. And so I packed in being a DJ. I had market stalls as well. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. I'd been running market stalls in Edinburgh and Newcastle for about 4 years. I packed in the market stalls. I packed in the DJing. I was managing a band, Child, which we got into the charts twice in that year. And I got married, and I started doing a business studies degree course at Newcastle University, which was part-time and night-time, which was tough going. And then I started working as a trainee export manager. I worked as an export manager from 1979 to 1985, and between 82 and 85, starting actually in 81, I was actually living most of the time in China. And it was a very interesting time in China at that time. There was no cars. Everybody was in Shanghai. There was 25 million people on bikes, and there was no foreigners. And people used to follow me. There was no hotels either, and people used to, if I left where I was staying, people used to follow me and ask me questions, and sometimes as many as 50 or 75 people. And if I ever stopped to look at something, they would all stop and I wonder what it was that I was looking at. And there was piles of vegetables at the end of each street, turnips and cabbages, and you just used to go and help yourself if you needed food. And I did really well. I got 100% of market share in China for my company, and our biggest competitors were German and Japanese. So I did exceptionally well. In fact, so well that in 1985 the Chinese economy collapsed. They had no more foreign exchange, and so I went back home to discover that the whole business of Crabtree Vickers was based on China. And with the market collapse in China, they lost about 90% of the business literally overnight.
Just let me stop you, Karl. So you're telling me a myriad of successes where you've been working for other people, selling, doing well, changing job, moving up the ladder, selling, doing well. And I know Crabtree is a bit of a turning point. Do you think, how did you make the leap from being an employed person, doing well, earning well, to actually then owning businesses and understanding the kind of financial dynamics of buying a company and turning it round? That's a big leap.
It was just total fate, Gary. I mean, the bottom line was I did the plan. I presented it at the board. The board said, no, we're not going to do that. So I thought, fuck it. So I went to London, and I saw 𝗟𝗓𝗡𝗧𝗘𝗡, who was the chairman of the company. And I said, this is my plan. He says, great plan. He said, but we're not going to do it. So I thought, oh, well, I'll take a job. I'll take one of the other jobs that I've been offered because the company's going to collapse. And then I thought, no, that's not the right thing to do. And it was about the time when Margaret Thatcher had introduced management buyouts in the country, and they were going red hot. And I had a mate who'd done a management buyout, so I went down to see him, and he had also worked for Vickers. And I literally, after I saw him and realised what he did, because it was just such a fantastic opportunity. You put 25 grand into a deal, you did a management buyout, you leveraged it all up, and if it was successful, you made a bloody fortune, It was a no-brainer. I literally flew back to Newcastle under my own power. And I said to 𝗟𝗓𝗡𝗧𝗘𝗡, would he sell me the company? And he said he would. When it canned over, much to my surprise, they lent me the money. And we did a management buyout. There was 4 of us in the team. And we did a management buyout. But by the time we'd done the management buyout in October 1986, the company was it was literally within weeks of collapse. And we were going to, we had a launch to tell everybody of our plans, which were to develop a new machine, which we'd never done before. We didn't have the guys to develop a machine, and that was going to cause us huge problems afterwards. And upstairs we had all our customers from the UK telling them how great our new company was going to be, and downstairs we were meeting with the liquidators, considering putting the company into receivership. Anyway, we pulled some stunts. I flew out to Hong Kong at Christmas that year, and I managed to pull off a really big order, which would give us 3 months' work. And then I focused the whole company on developing the new machine, and that's all we did for the next 9 months. Is we just developed the new machine, and we didn't have many sales at all, and we lost 2 members of the original management buyout team, so it was down to myself and a guy called Matt Cooper, who unfortunately is now dead. And for us to take the company forward, and eventually we had a lot of failure. I mean, on the machine was so. But when we went to launch the machine at the exhibition in Dusseldorf in Germany, we couldn't make a machine. The thing that we had there was just very much a prototype. And on the first day, a guy from Crown Cork and Seal came to look at the machine, loved it. Second day, he bought his boss. Third day, bought his boss. Fourth day, bought his boss. Fifth day, nobody came. Sixth day, Bill, forget his surname, who was the chief executive of Crown Cork and Seal, arrived on the stand. And he said, "I want to buy your machine." I said, "Yeah, great, okay." And he said, I said, "Well, yeah, we'll get you one in 9 months, 12 months time." He said, "No, I want that one." And I said, "Oh, okay." He said, and that was a disaster because the machine didn't work, but we were desperate for money. And he said, "How much is it?" So we went. I said, "Just give me a second," because we hadn't even thought about what the price was going to be. And I went outside with Matt. I said, "Matt, how much should we sell the machine for?" He said, "Well, 150 grand would be a great price." Okay. I said, "Right, fine." So I went back in and I said to Bill, "Bill, 350 grand." And I saw him reach for his checkbook, you see. And I said, "And that's with a 50% down payment today." So he gave us 175 grand there and then on the spot. So the next day we're on the stand. It's 20 to 10, and I couldn't see, and everybody. And another customer turned up on the stand, a guy called Patrick Binchedler, and he said, "Yep, I want one of these 1,200 machines. Here's the 50% down payment." So we've got another 175 grand, and then every day for the next 6 days we sold 24 machines in total for that price. And that wasn't really success. It was failure, to be honest, because when we started making the machines, they weren't working. We had to put engineers. In the end, we were putting 2 engineers in every box with all the machines that we sent out the door. But from all the failed machines and getting them put right in the field, which took us about 18 months, we eventually succeeded. And we had a great machine. And when we'd first taken over the company, on the Dun & Bradstreet reports on everything, on the performance of the company, there's the chart. Here's the worst performance, and we weren't even on the worst performance. Here's the best performance. We never applied there. By that time, which was about 1990, was just before the invasion of Kuwait, we were off the planet on every scale on the Dun & Bradstreet. We'd improved every single aspect of the company. And on top of that, when we first took over the company in 1986, if we wanted an apprentice, we would advertise, we would interview 20 or 30 apprentices, and we might get one, By 1990, we were taking 20 apprentices every year, and we got the top 20 apprentices, and we only ever had to offer the job to 20 people because they all came. And then the Gulf War came, which just goes to show that what can happen to you. You can be the greatest people on God's earth and the best performers, but the Gulf War, the Kuwait, and the market collapsed. Everything stopped. People cancelled orders. Nothing happening. And it was a bit of a coincidence because we did our second management buyout just before the invasion of Kuwait. Timing is everything. And we borrowed the Candover, who were the main backers of our company, wanted some success for the 10th anniversary, and they offered to let us buy the company out from them. And I didn't really want to do that because they'd been great. They were fantastic guys. And so I went down, I did a presentation. I told them exactly what we were going to do in terms of profits in the coming years. And the profits went up exponentially, 24% year on year profit and turnover growth. Anyway, they were hell bent on selling out to us. We just had to find the money, and we had to find 4 million quid. And we managed to persuade NatWest Bank to lend us 4 million quid. Gulf War came along, the Kuwait War, sorry. And the new bank manager demanded £2 million back. And of course, we didn't have it because of the war. And we were facing bankruptcy for the second time. And I have, and still have today, some really good friends in Hamburg and Germany who are our agents and very wealthy guys. And I rang them up and asked him if I could borrow 2 million quid from him. And he said yes. And that afternoon, he put the £2 million into our bank account, and that saved the company. And then we decided, because that had happened, the Kuwait War ended, all the orders came flooding back in. We decided that things weren't necessary in our control, so we would list the company. And we were just looking to do that. It was about 1992, I think, when our mutual friend Luke Johnson approached me to do a reversal into one of his shell companies. And so we did that for 20 million quid. And I stayed on as chairman of the public company for 18 months. But it was quite apparent that the board really didn't want me there. And so I resigned.
Karl, I want to kind of focus really on the sort of takeaways that people watching this might be able to learn from. And when you look at your early career, you've been a salesman and you've been a manager, and then you became a sort of financial engineer, understanding how to put deals together. Where do you think your sweet spot has been? Because you've done deal after deal after deal. You've done a lot of very successful deals back to back. Was it about the idea? Was it about the execution as a manager? Or was it that you got the financial structure right?
I think, well, firstly, I've had a lot of successes, but I've also had a lot of failures, and some of what the marketplace considers my greatest failures, in my opinion, were my greatest successes. Coming back to the question of what do I think? I'm absolutely useless at 99% of everything. There's only one thing I'm really any good at, and that's actually getting things done, and seeing a way forward to getting things done as well. I have an uncanny ability to be able to see a way forward and to also forecast what's going to happen, and what you need to do is you need to have a vision for the business which you can sell, but more importantly, have a really robust team, and to build around you. So I have a good mate. He was my best man, actually, and I was his best man. And he never employed anybody that was better than him. And the result is that the business was only ever as good as he was, right? Whereas it's a very easy thing to do. I always get people who are better than me, and as I said, it's no benchmark, but I always get people around me who are a lot better than me. And so my strength has been in building teams, identifying amazing people to put in those teams, leading that team with a vision that people can believe in, and because I'm only any good at making sure we stick to the knitting, to concentrate everybody's minds on what it is that we're doing, and to make sure that we do that.
And generally, the teams that you take with you, Karl, are they incentivized with equity, or do you tend to do it with salary and bonuses?
Done it with both. I mean, done it with both, and I've given equity away to people, and it's ended in tears. I've let people have equity in the company, and it's helped the company to succeed. There's no question about that, and it's great to see people making significant gains out of the work. And, I've always had, the public companies that I've had, I've always, even the non-executive directors, I've always ensured that they had shares. Getting more difficult these days because of the box stickers in the city. But I've done the more successful the deals have been in the public arena. I've done deals with venture capitalists as well, but apart from the Crabtree one was very successful. But then it was successful because they allowed us out of the deal to do the second management buyout before we did the listing. Yeah, so it's about great teamwork. It's about keeping everybody focused, inspiring them to deliver a vision beyond their dreams. That's it.
And that tenacity that you talk about, and I'd say you've got as much grit as anybody I've met. That tenacity has kept you going through good times and bad. So when deals are doing well, you tenaciously make sure that they happen. When they fall over, you've managed to pick yourself up and not let yourself get disillusioned.
I
How
did
do
for
you
I did for a while in 2013 and 14, to be honest. But that was a very difficult time. And through thin and thin, it's all been okay. Sorry, what was
let,
the
let,
question?
me, let me ask you a difficult question though, Karl. You got to an extreme level of wealth. We talked about the boats and the private jets, and I was lucky enough to be invited on commitment, and that's kind of my love of super yachts started. But how did you let it slip through your fingers?
It was a series of bad decisions, really. I mean, it was mainly the 2007 global financial crisis, to which I was very exposed. I mean, if you'd asked me a year before if I was exposed, I would have said no. I'd have just laughed. In fact, I did laugh. I did laugh in my bank manager. Bank manager, Barclays Bank, great guys, and I had a super bank manager, and he used to regularly come to the house and say, you want to pay down some of this debt, and I'd just laugh in his face, because it was all about getting bigger and bigger and bigger all the time. And during the global financial crisis, I'd done quite well out of a couple of copper mines I owned in Urumqi in China, and then some gold mines in the south of China, which I listed on the London stock market as China Gold Mines. And then I'd acquired 12 molybdenum mines, and the price of molybdenum, we'd agreed a deal subject to force majeure to selling the company for $196 million, of which $80 million was mine. And the GFC hit, and what happened was that the price of molybdenum went from $14 a pound to $8 a pound in a period of 10 days. And no matter, so the deal was off. That we're selling the company was cancelled. And you then think, well, what am I going to do? So, and the overheads were $500,000 a month. So the first month went by, paid the $500,000. Second month went by, I thought, still don't know what I'm going to do. Another $500,000. Third month, I thought, fuck me, that's a quick month. And the fourth month, I closed it down, and that was 90 million US down the pan. And I built up a company called D1 Oils, and D1 Oils, we'd sold out to BP, and I was chairman of D1 Oils. I actually started the company. We ended up with 350,000 employees. When I retired as chairman, Ron Oxborough, who was then chairman of Shell, he took over from me as chairman of the company. And we just sold out to BP. We sold out 50% of the company. We had another 50% to go. And I was supposed to be selling my shares and leave, but of course, Ron, super nice guy, persuaded me to stay. The shareholders wanted me to stay in with my shareholding, etc. And it was a bit of a no-brainer because BP were going to, every year, we're going to buy more and more of the company out, and the price was going to escalate. And so I was persuaded. And anyway, BP screwed it up, and that cost me 50 million. 50 million here, 90 million there. Sooner or later, you're talking real money, and because of the bank debt, I was underwater. But it was no big deal because Barclays were very supportive, amazingly supportive, to be fair. And for about 3-4 years after that, they really looked after me. But the
What
only
do you think? What do you think that the, say, perhaps first-time entrepreneurs that might be watching this can learn from battle-scarred old timers like us? What advice would you give them about leverage? I mean, you've been caught out. We've both been caught out with leverage. I bought a public company, did a rights issue, rescue rights issue. We owed the bank £6 million. I paid down 4 million of the debt, and the day that the bank thought they could sell us for more than the debt, they threw us on the rocks. So I've also made these terrible errors, but we've done it again and again and again. What advice can you tell people?
uh, in terms of dealing with banks, banks are completely changed now, Gary, over the years. In our day, you had proper relationships with relationship managers, and that's not the case these days. In fact,
They've become transactional rather than
well,
relationship based.
transaction instead of a relationship. And you're right. They'll lend you an umbrella when the sun's shining, the old saying, but they'll take it in when it rains. And it is a shame to be so cynical about it, but that's the way it is. I really, I'm not sure that I have any advice other than to get out there, kick ass, and take names. And if you're committed, you've got a great team of people, you've got a great product, then you know the world is full of people who don't do anything. So you don't have to be amazing just to do something. You just have to get it done. And I always used to say, have the story about asking a group of people to come next Monday morning at 8 o'clock to my office with a brown paper bag with 6 green apples and another brown paper bag with 6 red apples in it. And to find out how many of them would turn up with the right thing. Some of them would be late in bed, they'd miss the bus, they'd buy the wrong apples, they wouldn't have a brown paper bag. And that's all it's about. It's about delivering what you say. And sorry, here's the bit of advice. Do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. And if you can't, tell people as soon as you can.
It's interesting. There's an old expression, isn't it? It's easy to be successful in business. It's not about being good. It's just about outpacing your competitors. It's about being better than the people that you're competing with. And
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, people call me a businessman. I hate being called a businessman because all the people that I know, of which you
I've
are
heard
not
you
one.
called worse, by the way.
Sorry.
I've heard you called worse.
Yeah, no. Well, if 50% of the world don't hate you, you're not doing enough. If you're not living on the edge, you're taking up too much space. Yeah, all the businessmen I know make money by screwing other people. And I honestly don't believe that I've intentionally ever screwed anybody. I've always wanted to deliver the best product with the best team that I can, and I have a laugh. And if you're doing that and you're not, I was a founder of a company called UK Land Estates, which was a property company, and UK Land Estates made its money out of screwing its tenants. And it was an amazing business, uh, but I just couldn't be a part of it because it didn't go along with my ethics, so I left. And that decision of leaving the business probably cost me 80 million quid, because 5 years later it sold off really well.
You've got a strong sense of right and wrong, I've noticed, Karl, and that's spilt over into the community as well. And you've earned an MBE for services to industry. You've also stuck up for the little guy. I remember you leading a protest on some people that were working for NatWest that were being extradited to America. Tell us a bit about that, and tell us about how you've been a force for change.
Well, because, and I guess it comes from my dad. If there was two things that my dad ever left me. One was the fact that I was taught to sing by going to a choir 4 days a week. But the second was I guess a sense of duty, which I got from him with his being a policeman, and that is that when I ever see people who can't stand up for themselves, then I'll stand up for them if I can. And I actually, the MBE was only the start of it. I've twice turned down a seat in the House of Lords, which was the second time was a big mistake, because the second time I would have been on the cross benches, which I could have coped with. Anyway, so how I got involved with that was because obviously I'm an international businessman. I've lived and worked in 110 countries worldwide. And the NatWest 3 were getting screwed. And as it happened, I about 4 years earlier, there was this new extradition treaty being negotiated with America. I say negotiated, it was pass the KY jelly and we'll stick it up your mate. And I'm very good friends with Alan Milburn, who was Tony Blair's right-hand man at the time. And I went to see Alan to talk about how we could stop this extradition treaty, because it was an insidious treaty. And we couldn't do anything about it until it got to Parliament. And I went to see literally every person I knew, including David Blunkett and Baroness Scotland. And I told them exactly what was going to happen with the extradition treaty, and exactly what I said was going to happen has happened, right? And David Blunkett was very sanctimonious at the time, as was Baroness Scotland. But in fairness to David, he has admitted that he screwed up completely, and that he should have listened to what I had to say. So the NatWest 3 comes along, and they were going to be extradited, and so I thought, no, this is wrong. So I tried to get the Institute of Directors, and I tried to get the Chamber of Commerce interested, but they're zero interest at all. They're all just prefects looking after their own interests. And so laughably, I ended up getting involved with 𝗟𝗓𝗡𝗡𝗘𝗖𝗧 at Liberty. And if you'd ever said that I would even darken their door, I'd have spat in your face, because they were the complete left-wingers as far as I was concerned. And I built a team with 𝗟𝗓𝗡𝗡𝗡𝗡𝗖𝗧 and a bunch of other people, including Bob Geldof, Trudy Styler, and a load of other people, including Sarah Brown, actually, Gordon Brown's wife. And I put 350 grand in, and we fought the case. We had a march from which we started the IOD and ended up at the Home Office. But we lost. We failed, and they were extradited, and it was just, the whole thing was ridiculous. And then the next one was the Gary McKinnon case, which I got heavily involved with, in Gary and his mum and the rest of the team. And we succeeded with Gary McKinnon. Much to my surprise, Theresa May, who was then Home Secretary, refused to have him extradited to the States. And then the next one after that was, and this was where all my real problems came from. The next one after that was Babar Ahmed and 𝗖𝗓𝗧𝗘𝗡, who had been accused of being terrorists by the Met. And interestingly, at the time, John Stevens was head of the Met. John Stevens is a very good friend of mine. And they, in good old-fashioned Met style, they'd taken Babar down the station and beat the shit out of him. And he got a big compensation power. And that really pissed off the Met. So they went after him big time. But instead of sending the evidence to the Crown Prosecution Service and prosecuting him in the UK, they sent the evidence straight away to the FBI and the CIA, circumventing the British justice system. And I thought that was completely wrong, because if the guys had committed a crime, then they'd committed that crime in the UK. And if they'd committed the crime in the UK, they should go to court in the UK. And if found guilty, they should go to prison in the UK. But the gutless 𝗟𝗓𝗡𝗧𝗧, who was head of the Crown Prosecution Services, hasn't got any better since that day to this. He wouldn't hear of it. And so I ended up taking a High Court action to prove that 𝗟𝗓𝗡𝗧𝗧, the Crown Prosecution Service, the CIA, the FBI, and the Metropolitan Police had lied. And I succeeded in court, but we failed miserably, and Babar Ahmed and 𝗖𝗓𝗡𝗡𝗡𝗧 were extradited to America, where they were kept in solitary confinement for about 2 years. Then Tyto was found not guilty of anything, and Baba did a plea deal to get himself home. And the thing that he admitted to doing was not a crime in the UK.
Let's fast forward though to the current time, because you're building back up again now. I know you did a deal recently, when we last spoke 4 or 5 weeks ago. Um, how are you building it differently this time, in terms of security, in terms of ambition, in terms of goals? Um, really, from what you've learned.
Well, actually, what I've learned is that the life that I used to lead was a crazy life, and that the life that I now have is a way better life. I used to spend, before I got out of bed, every morning £1.5 million a year. That was before I got out of bed, and I probably spent 3.5 to 5 million quid a year. And I mean, I lived an unbelievable existence. And since 2012, I've learned to live like a normal person, and learning things like how to operate a dishwashing machine, how to operate a washing machine, how to clean your bathroom, and what normal people all do. And one of the things that I've also learned is how to be much more careful with the money, and not careful that I'll still do the things that I've always done in the past. But there was a time when I couldn't have told you with £500,000 how much I had in the bank, whereas today I can tell you practically to the penny how much I have in the bank. And sometimes it's not very much at all. And instead of spending £5 million a year, I'd be amazed if I'm spending £100,000 a year. And as you say, I've just sold one of my companies for 125 million quid, and I'm actually in the process of giving most of it away, because I don't need the money anymore, and I'm giving it to people who've helped me in life.
And that tighter financial control that you do personally, have you embraced that with your portfolio businesses as well? In that you're watching the pennies and holding accountants.
Very, 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 very much so. I mean, all the businesses, the businesses that I mean, we don't spend. I mean, they're as tight as a duck's arse in terms of spending. I mean, we've every single one of the businesses, the burn rate is zero. Well, it's not zero, but in the good old days of the .com, you were burning £1 million a month, and no, we're not doing that anymore. But I've been bitterly disappointed in some business partners in the recent past, and because of their behaviour. And that's a real lesson that I haven't yet put in the book that I've just written. What can possibly go wrong? But you shouldn't. And this is a real lesson for people who are starting up. Just because people are your mates doesn't mean they're not going to screw you. And I've been screwed by some of my very best friends, people who I've looked after and cherished over all the days. And the one thing that I insist on now, no matter how good the friendship is proper agreements from the get-go, shareholders agreements, so that everybody knows what's going on, because I'm just not going to let that ever happen to me again.
And it might not just be screwed over. It might come down to competency, or them not having the skills that they need to perform their role in the group.
Yeah, maybe. I wouldn't be as generous.
Well, that leads me on to a more reflective question, which is, what advice would you give your kind of 30-year-old self, if you go back and give that person the wisdom that you have now?
Stay in UK land estates for three more years, make another 80 million quid. When Sir John Hall asked me to be the third shareholder in Newcastle United for £1 million, and I didn't care much for the other two partners, so I turned him down, and that was 160 million quid. A great follower of Rothschild's, Benjamin Ross or Rupert? I can't remember the original founder, and he, when asked how he made his money, he always said by selling too soon. And so, 30 million quid in D1 oils, 80 million in UK land estates, 160 million in Newcastle United. It soon stacks up, And the other thing that I would have done is I would have looked after. I would have stashed some away, which is what all of the liquidators thought I had done, but I didn't do. And I would stash some away for a rainy day because in 2013 there was a long period, I mean a long period of time, when I had absolutely not a penny to my name, and I was going along to the local steak night at the hotel and gathering up the waste T-bone steaks and putting them in carrier bags to feed my dog because I couldn't afford to buy the dog any dog food. And the dog was a lifeline to me getting better because it got me out of the house.
So I'm paraphrasing a bit. You've had some great ideas. You've not want to change any of the ideas. You've talked about perhaps a little bit less leverage, a little bit more caution, putting a bit away for a rainy day along the way, being more diligent with shareholder agreements and partnership agreements. It's just really a bit more discipline and financial control over the good ideas that you've had, I guess. Is that? I'm not putting words
Yeah,
in your mouth.
I think that's absolutely true. And and the main thing is just, I mean, the money that has gone through my hands has just been incredible. I mean, I seriously have no regrets about it. I've loved every single second of my life. I've had a fucking great life. I am having a great life, and I will continue to have a great life. I live in as you know, an 8-bedroom, 8-bathroom shadow in a kilometre and a half of river frontage, 20 minutes from Nice Airport. I live there 6 months a year, and the other 6 months a year, I live here on the Indian Ocean in Fremantle. And it's just an absolutely fabulous life, and I don't regret a single piece of it.
Do you think there are the same opportunities now that there were when you were younger? Are you still observing profitable opportunities, profitable things to do?
I was talking to, did you know Rob Giles? That used to be at Gartmore. He's now at,
I don't know. I don't
all
know.
right, a big investor. He said to me, we had a long conversation. Well, I haven't talked to him for ages. Actually, he's got a house down in Mougins. I was talking to him the other day, and he said if he had £1 billion, he would buy up all of the small cap companies on AIM and on the main market, because he says that as private companies, you can get double or treble what the market capitalization is of the companies. Coming back to your question, is there the opportunities? I think there's always opportunities. There's always great ideas, and I'm right at the forefront of those great ideas as ever, with hydrogen conversions and brand new pharmaceuticals that I'm developing here in Australia. Where, by the way, in Australia you get 43% cash back on every pound, on every dollar you spend on research and development. Not a tax incentive; it's cash, and it'll not go on forever. So get yourself to Australia, and. Um, yeah, so there is the point that there are opportunities there. There's opportunities in technology, but the market's different to when we were kids. Because, for example, all of the brilliant guys that there are in China, and there are a lot of brilliant people in China today, young people who are hungry for a living. In the 80s, they didn't have access to the same information that we had, and now they have the access to that information, and they are even hungrier than we are, right? And the other thing that I find it infuriates me, particularly with big companies, you can't get anybody to do anything anytime. You can go into them and say, look, I've got a new machine here. It shits uranium and shits gold blocks and pisses uranium, and you can build it for 100,000 quid. And they dick on and they dick on and they dick on for months and months and months, and then they turn you down. And so everybody seems to be frightened to make decisions these days. But are there opportunities there? Of course, there's opportunities. There's loads of opportunities there. You just got to have the balls to take them.
But there does seem to be a quagmire of compliance and risk and regulation to go through. And it's as though governments and authorities want to try and protect investors against any little thing that might go wrong. Well, there's risk in business, there's risk in investing. You get things wrong. And I think if you over-regulate things, you'll just get people stopping trying. And these are the entrepreneurs, the job creators, the people that make the profits to pay the taxes to fund the NHS. And if you make it more and more difficult for entrepreneurs to do that, they just won't bother, or they'll go somewhere else and
You
do
just
it on
have
an
you just have to,
regulation.
have to look at what's happened with the oligarchs. I mean, you and I are screwed at every turn. You know, you want to open a bank account with a foreign director on your board, takes you 9 months, right? And you're screwed and nailed down every turn. But those guys, they've been allowed to do exactly as they please, you know. And it's only now, since Russia invaded Ukraine, that they're getting jumped on. But they've got away with it for years. And what has it done? What has it really achieved? Because the honest business person is complying anyway, and the bandits are just ripping you off, and they still are today. They're getting away with it, you know,
Yeah,
costing the world billions.
absolutely. Just to wrap up, Carl, if we could wave a magic wand now, and you could just fast forward 4 or 5 years, what future would you conjure up for yourself? If we're talking in 5 years' time, what will your life be like?
I've got it. It's here. I'm in it already. I'm a bit like Bilbo Baggins now. To when we're stepping over out the shire, I'll. I just. I want to continue just doing what I'm doing. I will be continuing to help startup companies like yourself. Again, like yourself, anybody comes along and asks me for help, I give them it, and that's what I'll continue to do. I will continue to do that. I will not be taking on huge businesses operationally, but I'll be helping teams of people to do that, and that's what I do today. And instead of owning 100% of the company, I own 10% of the company, and I own 10% of 10 companies. So when it comes to it, it's the same thing anyway. I'm working a lot less, and I'm happier than I've ever been. You know.
Well, that's great to know. Karl Watkin, thank you. One of the more colourful characters on the business scene, and wish you all the best. Thanks for the plug.
Cheers, mate.